graders! How are you guys doing today? My name is Mrs. Simpson and I work for the Ottawa Soil and Water Conservation District, and I am coming to you today from the gorgeous shores of Lake Erie. And I am so disappointed that I can't come and talk to you in person. However, I still wanted to share a super important information about a day that we have coming up. A very important day about our Earth. Does anybody know what day that is? It's Earth Day! Coming up on April 22nd. And I think it's so important to celebrate Earth Day. Very similar to how you and I have birthdays. We like to have a day that everyone puts aside and celebrates us. Well, Earth Day is a birthday for the Earth. And so it's one day that's put aside where we are extra special and we do some extra special things just for the Earth. Now, let's talk about Earth Day. Does anybody know how old Earth Day is? It's not as old as the Earth. It started in 1970, so it's only 51 years old, pretty young. But it started for something that happened here in Ohio. Something very strange happened in 1969. Something caught on fire that should never catch on fire. Do you guys know what it is? It was a river. A river caught on fire in 1969. Here in Ohio, just about an hour away from here in Cleveland. And the river is called the Cuyahoga River. And in 1969, it caught fire. And the thing is, it wasn't even the first time it caught fire. It was the 13th time this river caught fire. Now, how do you think water catches on fire? Well, if you guys have ever visited Cleveland, you'll see that there's a lot of industry there. There's a lot of businesses. There's a lot of factories, and they make many of the things that you and I need every single day. But back in the 50s and 60s, they would build all of these supplies that we need, and then they would pour all of the remains, such as their oil and their gasoline, into the river. But if you've ever been to Cleveland, you'll notice there's lots of railroad tracks that cross over that river. And if you've ever seen a train at night, there's sparks. And it's been told that when the train went over, a spark landed in the Cuyahoga River and it caught on fire. Now, what's special about the 1969 fire is that somebody was there and they took a picture. And maybe you've heard that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And somebody sent that picture to Time magazine, which back in the day was the magazine to have. And that made it a national issue. People from California to New York saw a picture of the Cuyahoga River catching on fire. And you know what? As bad as that was, it really got people thinking, maybe we shouldn't be dumping oil and gasoline into the river. Maybe we should do something a little bit better for the Earth. And so because of that, two things started. In 1970, Earth Day started, and we're celebrating its 51st birthday on April 22nd this year. And also, we needed some people out there making sure that this didn't happen anymore. So the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, came into place, and they're kind of the policemen to make sure that people aren't dumping oil and gas into the water. I brought a little friend here with me. Does anybody know who this is? It's the Lorax. And if you've ever seen the Lorax, I have this book here. And Dr. Spruce actually knew how bad Lake Erie was and how we had all of this oil and gasoline and we didn't have fish. And he wrote about it. And I'm going to read you one page from the Lorax. And it says, "You're glumping the pond where the humming fish hummed. No more can they hum, for their gills are all gummed. So I'm sending them off oh, their future is dreary. They'll walk on their fins and get woefully weary, in search of some water that isn't so smeary. I hear things are just as bad up in Lake Erie. So even Dr. Seuss knew what a problem we had, and he wrote about it in the Lorax. And so we came up with the Clean Water Act, we have the EPA, and guess what? Things turned around. Our beautiful lake started spawning millions of fish, perch and walleye. We were able to go boating, we were able to go fishing again, and things really turned around. And so there were some students just like you guys that wrote Dr. Seuss. And they wrote him a letter and said, you know what? We have turned things around. Our Lake Erie's looking really good. We think you should get rid of that line in the Lorax. And you know what? Dr. Seuss listened. And in 1986, he wrote those students a letter and he said, from now on, I will remove that line from the Lorax. So if you guys have ever seen the book, The Lorax, chances are that line is gone. Which is awesome! Way to go, Earth Day! Way to go, students just like you, making a change. But you know what? Things are starting to change again. Have you guys been to Lake Erie lately? Been swimming? You might have noticed we might have some algae, all of that green gook that we have in the lake. And that's not because of the oil or the gasoline. That's because of things that you and I are doing. And so this Earth Day, I want you to think of what you can do to make a change. How can you celebrate our Earth? Everyone makes a difference. Maybe if you have a picnic at a place such as this, you take all of your litter with you. Or maybe if you go to a restaurant, you do something called skip the straw. We're trying to reduce all of the plastic that we use because a lot of that plastic ends up in the lake. So when you guys come to April 22nd this year, I want you to celebrate our Earth and think of 3 different things that you can do to help celebrate this beautiful environment that we have to live on. Now, because you are 4th graders, you already have one thing that I'm going to give you that you can do for Earth Day, and that is plant a tree. To help in your celebration of Earth Day, each one of you are going to be going home with one of these blue spruce seedlings. Now this blue spruce is called a conifer tree. And what a conifer means is a tree that has needles, and when it gets larger, it's going to have pine cones. Now these needles will never fall off in the wintertime. Different than the trees that you see that have leaves that fall off every fall and you jump in the leaves. This tree has needles, and it's called a blue spruce because as it gets larger, it has a beautiful blue coloring to it. Now, why do you think planting a tree is something great to do for our Earth on Earth Day? Just think of some different things that trees provide you and I and other animals that live on the Earth. Everyone take a big breath. This tree, when it gets full grown, will provide enough oxygen for a family of 4. What else are useful for trees? Think of birds. What would birds use trees for? Possibly planting their nest in a tree, maybe using it for cover, getting some different seeds and food from trees. Some other things, we might use trees for shade. And look around your house. Everything that is made of wood originally came from a tree very similar to this blue spruce. Now, when you guys take this tree home, you can keep it around for a couple days, but I recommend planting it very quickly, maybe this coming weekend if it's nice outside. When you go and plant it, I recommend planting it in a place similar to what's behind me. if you have a vegetable garden or a flower garden or even a really large pot to plant this garden in. Now, why do you think it might be a bad idea to take a tree this size and put it out in the middle of your yard? You want to know what the #1 killer of trees that look like this? The lawnmower. And I will tell you, if I'm mowing the lawn, I probably won't see this. So a great place to plant it when it's this size is in a flower garden or in a large pot. Now, when you go and you plant it, you're gonna wanna dig a hole pretty deep. I have a hole here, which is about the size of these roots. And when you plant it, you're going to go dig your hole, put it in the ground, and then you're gonna take all of this great soil and fill it in all around the tree. Oh, this is so wonderful. Good. Okay, when you get done planting your tree, you're gonna wanna push down all around it and make sure that this tree, if it gets a little bit windy, isn't going to fall over. Make sure it's straight up and down, because a tree that leans over doesn't look so good. And you're gonna keep it here for a couple years until it gets to be about this size and a little bit more noticeable. And then you can dig it up and you can plant it where you want to have its forever home. You want to make sure you don't keep it this close to a house, because even though this tree looks pretty small right now, in a couple years, it's going to get big. These trees can get as tall as 30 feet tall, so you want to make sure in a couple years you put it in a great place for its forever home. You might not remember everything that I told you today, and that's okay, because not only will you be going home with that blue spruce, you're going to be going home with a card that gives you all of the tips that you need to make sure that this tree stays alive for you. Now this summer, when you're outside and you're running around and you're really hot and thirsty, chances are your tree's probably hot and thirsty too. So I'd recommend maybe once a week making sure that you water this tree. Don't put it in standing water, that's too much, but make sure you give it a little good spritz of water so it's not too thirsty this summer. Other than that, it shouldn't be too hard. They're pretty easy. Just sit back, watch them grow. In a couple years, they're going to provide a lot of great habitat and air for you and I. Now please go out, enjoy your day, and think of some other things that you can do to celebrate on April 22nd for our Earth Day.